welcome to Where Are You on the AI Threat Spectrum? Understanding the hidden AI risks inside your organization before it's too late. I want to welcome our presenters, Robert Praul, Director of Security here at DivergeIT, and Connor Bescos, VP of Operations here at DivergeIT as well.
Thank you, Isabella. So everyone, many of you already know me. If you haven't yet, I look forward to getting to know all of you, as follow-up to this if you need help on your journey. But we really wanted to take a minute, and with all of the news that everybody's seen around AI, everybody's probably being exposed to AI in some fashion. We did an old school raise of hands right now. Every one of you has used it in some way, whether it's ChatGPT or some other tool that you're encountering. Now, that applies to your business too. So goal of today is to help you with some information and a solid plan to move forward.
Well,
so what is the AI threat spectrum? And I think it's important for all of us to understand that's what we're talking about today. How do we define where we sit, whether it's stage 1 through stage 4, which is high risk to low risk? So you've got unknowns that you're not in control of and could present risk to you, or you're in control, you have a strategy, and you know how to use AI to make a difference and be a differentiator for your business. It's becoming important. You hear the news. People are going to be affected. People are going to be losing their jobs. I think businesses are going to really need to adapt and adopt these strategies to be able to be successful in the future. So there's a few things you're going to take away today. So we want to prepare you. One is, how do you find out what AI is already in use in your business? Second is, what does it look like to actually come up with a strategy, to create a policy, and then put in controls to make sure that people are doing what you want? And the last is, where do you fit on the spectrum of risk? Like, the reason that's important is because it helps you define that strategy, that policy, and what controls you're going to put in place to protect your business. But let's start with the problem. Everybody's like, well, what, is this a threat to me? Does it really matter? And I think the short answer just is yes. If you walk away with nothing else from here, it's that your people are using AI, whether you've approved it, you're paying for it, or what. This is just every single, 9 out of 10 employees are using some sort of tool, whether you're paying for it, have approved it, etc. Right? And only 4 out of 10 are actually using something the company has provided. So most companies are a little behind on the path of defining a strategy, a policy, etc. So I think as you go through this, you're going to end up with a much better understanding of where you sit on that threat spectrum, and be able to carve out and create a good policy, strategy, and control for yourself. So next thing. All right, so let's get down to it. So here you are. How do you actually go about, after this meeting or after this webinar, starting to figure out what is going on in your environment? So most of you have access to some sort of IT people. I would start by asking your IT guys, what AI web applications are they going to access on the web? Also, maybe they have systems that can tell you what's being downloaded on the computers. But simpler than that, just send out an anonymous employee survey. Ask your people. And then last, you have financial records. Expense reports are being submitted. This is an easy business problem. Just start looking at what they're asking you to help with. So those are some key ways to start to pick at the problem and understand what's actually going on. So, but what does it mean? Like, what is the real risk? So once you figure out where you're on the spectrum, defining what does this risk actually mean to you? There's these 4 categories we're going to talk about real quick. Each one of these are different vectors where it could affect you. First one is hallucination. You probably heard that as one of the key buzzwords that's come around with AI use, which is the idea that they'll just make up things. Now, that's absolutely true, and AI can be used in a way that prevents that. So if it's being done correctly, you can avoid hallucinations. But uncontrolled use of AI means that your employees may be taking action on hallucinations from AI, whether it be, should I pay this tax, or is this business license required, or something that may fundamentally impact your business based on a hallucination from an AI. Don't probably want your people doing that. Second is data privacy. If they're sharing anything related to one of your clients, you may be inadvertently violating an agreement you have with your client. Third, there are state privacy laws, along with other frameworks and regulations you may be subject to, or your clients may be subject to, and you may, again, inadvertently be in violation of those standards because your employees are doing this in an uncontrolled way. And then the last, which I think is the most important, is you spend a lot of time building your business. Your business has these mechanisms that allow you to create value. Those things are often then being put into the AI. And if it's not under your control, two things could happen. One, your data is getting trained on the AI. So if I'm a competitor, I could be asking the same tool and getting the information about how to more effectively run my business. And that's something that you learned with your sweat to be able to create good value and have good processes to serve your client base. But the second is, if your employees are using their own personal tools, when they leave, they take that information with them. You lose it.
Yeah, I think that's the bigger risk, Robert, is if they're using personal ChatGPT or Claude, if they're putting all that corporate, company information into it, they can, when they leave the company, they'll take it with them and be able to reuse it in a different way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with that, I'd like to hand over to Connor Bescos. So he's on the operations side, is really dialed in on how to use these in an effective way without adding risk to your business.
Yeah. Thanks, Robert. So most of the AI tools we can kind of frame in chatbots, copilots, agents. And in the last 2 years, we've generally been at tier 1 or tier 2 with a chatbot and a copilot. You as the user or the human asks a question and it answers back to you. You're in the loop for every output, ultimately. Those are things like Copilot in Microsoft 365 or your AI in your CRM, like HubSpot AI. But primarily it's reporting driven, summarization, or just general questions. Tier 3 or agents is where this year's headed. And we'll start to see these tools released, whether they're custom built tools. But the key there is the agents don't suggest, they take action. So they can send an email, like approve an expense report. And everything we talk about here, the further right you go on the spectrum, matters more. So agents ultimately change the math in a couple different ways. A chatbot hallucination is something, it's embarrassing. Robert mentioned they make up information, but if you're in the loop, you can joke about it with your colleagues or friends about, hey, look what ChatGPT answered here. When agents are taking an automated action, it could result in an incorrect action. So it could be an email with information that's sent to a prospect, or you're accidentally sharing information that you shouldn't be, and it can lead to, unexpected outcomes that aren't predictable. So the blast radius ultimately isn't bounded by yourself or an employee or someone catching it. It's bounded by the permissions that you give the agent. And then the audit trail is an interesting problem that we'll work to solve over time. But if an agent takes an action, who's at fault there? Is it the person that authorized the agent? Is it the person that authored or created the agent? And then how do you determine where that fault lies? So we kind of brought this down into 3 parts. If you go on social media or you read a lot of these governance frameworks around social media or around these AI governance, it'll be like a 60-page report. It's tough to digest. It comes with a lot of things that may not be usable. And so we summed it up into 3 quick words or actions. So the strategy is ultimately the what, policy, the way we think about it are the rules, and then governance is the who and when. For most companies, strategy is like really a procurement decision in disguise. So if you're a Microsoft 365 shop, we would suggest starting with Microsoft Copilot, not because it's the best at everything, but because it keeps your data in your tenant, in your compliance boundary. You probably have tools for like data loss prevention and the like to help you govern and enforce your policy. It's okay.
Connor, are there vertical ones that might be something to consider inside of a specific business like a law firm?
Yeah, there's definitely vertical ones. So it's like Harvey for a law firm, or industry specific AIs that you can, like Clio in the legal space as well, that you can consider, or you may have other applications that have some of these AIs built into your compliance boundary already. The worst move, like experimentation's good. It's good to iterate, but you don't want to just bolt on random AI tools that either not everybody's aware of, your IT teams can't monitor and comply with. So we want this strategy to be successful for you, and a good indication of that is it being used and is it being adopted, so that your employees aren't being searching for alternatives. And then policies, policy and practice here. This is kind of the rule set and how you're going to go about enforcing it and come up with either a consequence or rules to enforce it. A lot of policies fail because they're complicated. Either a lawyer writes them, HR, whatnot, and they aren't really read or they're not directly applicable. So we'd suggest keeping them down to 1 page. Name the specific tools that you're going to be using, and you can adjust this policy as you go. And then important thing to consider is naming the data categories that are off limits. So whether it's client PII, financial information, anything not necessarily covered under an NDA. And then governance is the part everybody skips. It's usually the part that really matters, and helps you keep your strategy on point and your policies enforceable. Some key suggestions we have is name 1 person whose performance review includes AI risk. Not necessarily, you can have a committee outside of that, but you want a key stakeholder that is named. Quarterly review is what we would suggest, not an annual, just because the space is moving really fast. And you may have a lot of iteration changes over the course of the year that an annual won't let you stay up to date. And then the biggest one I want to flag is offboarding, which changes the game a little bit. When someone leaves, we kill their email, their VPN, we kill their access generally, but you don't necessarily rotate all these other tools like API keys or to their personal Claude or ChatGPT. So you may have some accidental exposure here. So where to start? The worst outcome from this webinar that we see is you go back, you feel overwhelmed, you do nothing. So some of the direct tangibles that we'd suggest are pick 2 detection methods that we had previously. I'd probably pick an IT one and then do the survey and run them sometime this week or next week. This month, I would craft and just take a stab at writing a 1-page policy. Name a sanctioned tool. You can do it by use case, which is good. And 2 general ones to start with are chat and meetings. And then this quarter, I would name an owner. Find someone in your company that's a great stakeholder, and then put a quarterly review on the calendar so you can start discussing it. Basically, you'll go from stage 1 or where you are on that spectrum and be approaching stage 4. Basically,
so the one thing to add there is just try to pick controls that are going to let you automate the enforcement of your strategy and your policies. That is the number one thing. If you write it in a policy and assume people are going to follow it, it becomes more painful for you later to have to deal with that versus automated enforcement. But spectrum.divergent.com, that is our official assessment online. There are these kinds of questions that you're going to answer, which is, can you name all the tools inside that your team uses today? Like, you can informally do this in your head right now. Do you have a written AI acceptable use policy? Has anyone enforced it in the last 90 days? These are all questions, if you can answer for yourself, you're going to immediately have a good idea. But feel free, like I said, to take a look at that assessment, because it goes a little deeper. And at the end of the assessment, you actually have a printable report that you can get. So with that, this is our Q&A section. There's a lot of content we just covered. We'd love to see any questions that you have. Feel free to add those to the chat. It looks like we may already have a couple of those. So I'm going to pull those up and let's take a look. All right, so we are a small to mid-sized company. Are we really a target for AI-powered attacks, or is this more of a concern for larger enterprise? Connor, what do you think of that?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with the AI-powered attacks is it's more like you might not specifically be targeted, but the net that we're going to be catching companies or trying to compromise companies is getting bigger. So you may end up in that net and get caught. I think it's the biggest risk.
Yeah, and we use this with the phishing analogy all the time, which is they don't even know who you are until they've already kind of compromised you. So it's kind of reverse. They don't realize you're a target until after they've actually gotten your information. So that's a little bit too late. All right, our next question is, our employees are using ChatGPT to help their work. As long as they're not sharing anything confidential, are we actually at risk? Connor, opinion?
Yeah, I would, I think that the biggest thing there is you're leaving the discretion of what is confidential to your employee or what's okay to share. And they're taking that information out of your boundary. And so I think you're putting yourself at risk because you're not keeping control of the environment.
Yeah, and to add on to that, I think going back to that risk slide, there are 4 different areas where you could potentially be at risk, right? So whether it's an employee making a decision based on information AI provides, or it's some sort of agreement they're violating with your client, the employee may not be aware of. I think the mistake is really letting the employee dictate what risk is and assuming that there's a lack of risk because you're assuming that you have some idea of what they're putting in. So I just avoid that. And the simple answer there is, if you get the right kind of accounts, there are privacy policies about how that information is used. So that's at least addressing one of those risk vectors for you.
Yeah. Robert, we have a good question in the chat. Is there a way to monitor what AI tools employees are using that they are not supposed to be using?
Absolutely. So that was one of the things that we had mentioned early on, is I think it starts with actually allowing and blocking tools that are available in the environment, whether that's web access, looking at the endpoints to understand what the employees have installed or requested to be installed, looking at your expense reports, using these kind of controls to understand the landscape of what tools might be in use. And then from there, making decisions about which ones you want to approve access to.
Yeah, I think that the other key is like AI itself, like you have these risks without AI. So like whether it's websites that you want to restrict or not allow that may be inappropriate for the workspace. These AI just like accelerates or accentuates the problem. So making sure you have good security tools and security frame, like web filtering as an example, is a way you can detect and enforce and block unsanctioned AI tools.
All right. So let's see. We've got another one here. Do Azure OpenAI agents models we've created come with any degree of confidentiality as opposed to just the public-facing ChatGPT?
Yeah. I mean, I think using the Azure OpenAI or Azure Foundry agents is a sanctioned tool, and it keeps it in your Microsoft 365's tenants boundary. So that's a great approach and a great strategy.
Yeah, I always use this analogy with our clients, which is look at your Microsoft 365 as like your perimeter, just like the camp with the barbed wire around it. If you're putting things inside of your perimeter, your security perimeter, you're immediately better off than if you're adopting tools that live outside of your perimeter. It requires more consideration in how you're going to use those.
I think, and then I'll just add to it, because Azure OpenAI or Azure Foundry allows you in your existing boundary to test models. So if you're like, and this may get too technical, but like Claude, I've heard about it on the news, I really want to test Opus, you can add that to your existing Azure Foundry. It's in your boundary. You already have the tools to protect you. And it's a great way to experiment too.
Yeah, and to add on to that, like we haven't really talked about Copilot much today. Copilot's a great choice to consider. We're going to address one of the questions in the chat right now. But one thing to know about Copilot that's changed recently is that they're now allowing you to choose which model you're using as part of your Copilot chat. So if you want to be asking questions from Claude, you're able to generate responses from different models right from your Copilot versus having these individual subscriptions. So it's a great way to consolidate access to these powerful tools all under one license. So in that same vein, we have Microsoft. Another question was, we have Microsoft 365 Copilot included in our license. Does that mean it is already active in our environment? And should we be concerned about what it can access?
I mean, absolutely. If you have the license, it's assigned and enabled to end users, it would be active in your environment. So you'll start seeing it in Microsoft Office, M365 chat, and the like. It's, and it'll start turning on and enabling. The concerns you have there are a lot of the risks that we talked about previously. But if you use SharePoint as an example, and you have a lot of anonymous links or all company links, the AI will start surfacing that. So if someone accidentally shared payroll information with an all company link, the human may not be able to find it, but Copilot may. So those are some of the risks that you may need to address.
And we do a very specific process to prepare your environment when we roll out Copilot just for that reason. Every single rollout, we found things that would have been troubling or should not have been accessed by the general users that were basically public information to the AI. So do not take that lightly. Adequately prepare your environment before you roll out Copilot in your environment. Second, there's a little bit of I think misunderstanding about Copilot. A lot of people see Copilot icons on your desktop and think that you may have Copilot included in your licensing. Typically, people often are seeing that that's the kind of free Microsoft Bing style version of Copilot. What's important to know there is, unless you're logging in with your Microsoft 365 or Google equivalent work address, you're likely using a service that is equivalent to using like free ChatGPT. So again, there would be concerns about sharing information in that because it's not staying within that security perimeter that we had discussed. So just one key thing to think about: make sure you're prepping your environment and make sure that you know which version of Copilot people are using. Let's see, we got another one here. If I don't have any AI governance framework already set up, does that mean all my prompts and outputs are being used for AI model training? How does that, see more, put my company's sensitive data at risk?
The short answer is it depends. I mean, it depends what tools you're using. If you're using like a consumer ChatGPT, by default, it opts your chats into training, or Grok or Claude. So you want to be careful there, and you would definitely want to consider either moving to a paid corporate team plan or using Copilot or Gemini or something through your work account.
Connor, can we touch real quick on, the coding aspect of this? I don't want to go in depth, but I think we want to remind people that this is a whole new element that's moving quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I think the coding, whether it's Claude Code or Codex or CoWork, which is a non-coding in Claude, I think some of the risk there is that it enables your users to use these agents on their computer, and anything on that computer, whether it's a map network drive, SharePoint files that are synced locally, or the browser access, it enables those agents to act in the user context.
So most of you probably have heard that called vibe coding, and we'll probably do another session just to follow up and dig into that specifically. But you need even more strategy if you're going to allow your people to start vibe coding business process to protect your business and security. So just something, because it's probably one of those marketing terms that you're hearing out there quite a bit. We wanted to make sure and address that. And if you have more questions about that, like I said, we'll be doing another session to dig into that specifically. So again, start today. Don't wait. Go out, ask your IT firm, ask your IT guy, how do I know who's going to what AI tools on the web? So again, we want to say thank you. Thank you for taking the time. This is a really important topic, and the world is changing really quickly. We'd love to help you on your journey, and hopefully today was helpful. So with that, thank you, Connor, for sharing such great information, Isabella for helping put this together, and all of you for attending. We appreciate you.